very extreme clarity of manipulation. That was a very familiar tune, kind of, that I was used to from the communist era. That this whole narrative about the pilot errors and drunk president and so on circling, all that was a very suspicious thing, but really didn't have to wait very long, because very short after there were articles in English by Buchanan that were very competent and that were questioning all those things. So in terms of suspicions and in terms of having some intelligent speculations refuting some of those arguments, that I didn't have to wait very long, and anybody who was reading English and was operating on the internet was able in English to find us. Now the question is really about not about having doubts what is truth, what is not. The question that really kind of were puzzling for me at that time and the people that I knew. And in fact, what was extremely frustrating, the lack of ability to answer the question why there was no meaningful investigation on that whole catastrophe. The way it was handled was different than other accidents. The way it was presented, with sticking with the first version, and the way it was reinforced and that later was commented, just kind of, you know, colloquially speaking, it was thinking to the heaven from the beginning, and it was extremely suspicious. And that was the reason why, when I went to Poland, I wanted to talk firsthand with the people in Poland, because I just couldn't quite understand. I couldn't believe that there was no clear effort of understanding what was going on there. And that when I went to Poland, it was extremely frustrating to see that this is not just that I cannot talk to these people, or that they're afraid to talk on the phone or write in the email or on the internet. It was that people were really somehow hypnotized, or did not have the will to have understanding it. For some reason, there was no particular energy until that conference, Smolensk conference. There was no clear energy and interest and the will of finding the truth. It's hard for me to think, to know about what people are thinking or not thinking. I can only say what they were saying, and what they were saying was really a meaningless repetition of the official media that were sounding like Russian propaganda. And that I don't understand, because Poland that I remember that I left in 1983 was different. Pretty much everybody knew who was bad guys, who was good guys, and everybody was kind of very clearly motivated with the main ideas of freedom, independence, of you know, Poland, of greatness of Poland, and so on. Not greatness in terms of some superpower, but greatness in terms of being proud of your own heritage and of your own country. What I found there in 2012 was more of a sort of people who were compliant with official propaganda and just repeating it without asking themselves any questions about the reasonability of the questions. I couldn't understand that basic questions that some guy like Buchanan in America, who has never been close to there, and who didn't grow up under Russian domination, can have a very pointy, intelligent, and insightful questions, in addition to being mechanically competent with the knowledge of the plane. How a guy like that can write a popular article that is available to everybody, and people in Poland who actually are vested in the emotionally in the accident, in the catastrophe, are not in any way in tune with this kind of arguments or with this kind of considerations. That I couldn't understand. That was a level of oblivious sort of indifference and compliance. And And one thing I could never anticipate from Polish people was a compliance and obliviousness towards this kind of issues.
Right. So you've asked those questions to yourself, you've checked your sources, and you find out what?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by my sources, but if you're talking about my study, then I was later on, as I was studying different, when I got invested into it, when I invested my time and did the research and looked at the satellite imagery and analyzed the pictures and look at that, I found that everything was hogwash. I mean, the whole story about the plane crashing on that tree, it's a total bogus fairy tale. I mean, it is something that does not stand the very basic scrutiny, even from the point of view of physiology of the tree. It's a Betula pendula that has a very violent, vivid sap that is impossible to not to see, and that would have basically almost flat that place. It would be there the structure, the destruction pattern of the fibers of the tree. So the height of that thing, the speed, and later on, not moving plastic bags with the under the blow-by of a 80-ton plane. This is a story that is so impossible that it's really kind of shameful that anybody would actually try to stick with it. So the fact that people so easily bought that this kind of version, and that they allow that to persist later despite all kind of evidence coming in, it's quite depressing.
Your research was on the satellite pictures that you purchased. You said initially the pictures were available from commercial sources, and they disproved the Russian narration in that area.
Well, they were part of the supporting evidence. There were also many pictures that were taken on the ground. In terms of SAP, you cannot see it from the satellite imagery, but you can see it on the photographs of the tree, of the ground photography on the tree. The measurements of the tree dimensions, for example, I did all that on the regular 2D photography. The location of it and what was happening and the displacement of the whether that is trash or anything else. That is something that is on the satellite imagery as a major thing that can be found. So altogether, pretty much ever since then, everything that I was studying and everything that later on Professor Binieda and Glenn Jorgensen and Piotr Witakowski were studying, that's all pretty much supports the refutation of that official story. And that's kind of, I guess, in the long run, it's a success. But the fact that it takes so long time, and that there was no investigation on the ground, and that there is no evidence in terms of the actual wreck parts of it, and so on. Well, that in itself is a absolutely mind-boggling mystery.